Yeah, that is, it's interesting that that's not as understood as you would expect. Um, we've got the base stat before COVID was that 10% of all healthcare professionals at any given moment are using some kind of a substance to get through the day.
Yeah,
Whether it's, you know, I, injectable hydromorph is, of course, a huge problem in BC with nurses. It's completely out of control, in my opinion. But it might not be that. It might be, you're getting home and you find you've got to drink a certain amount of alcohol every night to, sleep properly because of the stress throughout the day. All those types of things. But what people don't realize is that if a lot of these drugs are used in such a way where they're titrated to a level that makes you, like you said, I'm speaking from experience here because I was the same way. We're very similar in this way, in that for me, oxycodone was a stimulant, gave me more patience, empathy. I was able to be in situations where I would have had a hard time keeping my temper. And instead I was able to kind of talk my way through a situation that maybe I would have walked away from, that type of thing. I think that's kind of what you're describing. And can you, how did your patients, was there complaints from your patients about, you walking around like a zombie or looking like you were groggy or anything like that? Or what was the feedback there?
I had never received any negative feedback. I'd never received any complaint. But within a month of going off work, and that's another story. But within a month of that, I recall getting a letter, an email from a physician who had received a letter of compliment about the care that I gave them, and what a nice, caring, thoughtful, sensitive nurse I was, who made them feel safe while they were there. And for me at the time, reading that email, I remember that, like, it give me the sense of guilt and shame, but it also reinforced that all those balls were still in the air, that
Right.
it told me, not only am I functioning, but hey, you can keep going. This has brought you back to that level that I was at, much earlier in my career, or even a couple of years ago, before I had kind of become bogged down with stress and anxiety and that environment. So
Right.
it told me, like, hey, you're okay.
Yeah. So maybe without that kind of assistance, pharmaceutical assistance, you might have been rightfully so heading towards a burnout situation. But because you had that hydromorph available, you were able to stave that off artificially and continue and not only do your job, but here you are getting reinforcing compliments from staff and patients that you're doing an excellent job. So
the burnout statement there, Nathan, is spot on. And I think that actually occurred a long time ago.
okay.
Or at least the need to pause and start to unpack some of the things that I was carrying around as a nurse, as an ER nurse. Life goes on, and the trauma and the stress keeps happening, and it won't let up, because you need it to let up. The shifts are the shifts. And so, I think if I had paused a year prior, or even 6 months prior to starting to use, would have probably been preventable. But for a host of reasons, we keep going until we sort of can't go on anymore. But I think the burnout had happened some time ago, and the opiates, like I said, just kind of brought me back to that baseline, and then kind of brought me beyond that, where I could go even faster than I could before.
Right. And for longer.
And exactly. And, work 4 hours of overtime and still be keeping the same pace that I was at, hours prior in the shift. Yeah.
Right. Okay. So you're able to It kind of squeezed this extra energy out of your work life under the circumstances. How did it translate to things at home? Were there things at home that were bothering you, other than the fact that you might have been in like a mild state of agitation from withdrawal, or what was the downside of this strategy? Because that's what it was, right? A coping strategy.
Yeah, I think it isolated me. I think I was isolating myself to keep the secret. I think I was developing more irritability, more difficulty with managing stress within my personal life, and I think that the stress and the trauma that I was accumulating, in addition to hiding my opiate use, it put a barrier between myself and my loved ones, and suddenly I had a big secret, and you do everything you can to kind of keep that secret, because there's such a shame and such a stigma attached to opiate use that the act of hiding it becomes sort of as fundamental as using.
Yeah, I definitely felt the same way. In fact, you probably felt the amount of energy that was being drained on you daily just from keeping up that part of your juggling act, right? Like you need to make it so that everything's going okay. Plus you've got this thing, and you've got the guilt and the shame in the background. And by the way, if you get caught, you're fucked, right? So you gotta, you have to somehow protect that very carefully while you're going about your, whatever your personal life is.
You do, and it really takes on a life of its own. The ability, or the need to hide it, the need to manage all the aspects of your life, to preserve that secret, and to preserve that addiction, is really, really compelling. And it's a silent voice that's telling you what to do, what not to do, guiding your actions without you even calling it by name. And of course, after the fact, I think we all learn to call it by name and call it what it is and out it. But at the time, it's very, very much a powerful force.
Yeah. When you're not aware of it, I was blown away by what the subconscious is capable of, and how far ahead it can be of your conscious mind.
That's right.
As far as you could find that your subconscious had made a plan days in advance that would put you in a vulnerable position, and you didn't realize until you got into that vulnerable position what your brain was trying to do.
Yeah,
but it was trying to get back, or trying to get closer to getting more of that drug. And just because of that portion that I talked about earlier, that of your mind that is just hell bent on it. Well, I guess once that link is formed, I mean, that's the way I look at it. You get that,
yeah.
Once that positive link is formed, it's a very difficult thing to, I mean, time is helpful, but I don't see it as something that's ever going to go away entirely for me.
No. And I really think that link forms remarkably quickly.
Mm-hmm.
When you're in that circumstance, and that new pathway, that new neural pathway of, here's what I'm feeling, here's the effect it has on me, here's how I can manage it. And then it works, and it reinforces it. And then the next time that stimuli, the stress, the anxiety, come back to you, you've got your out. And it is like a magnet. And I can't speak to the pull that other substances have, but opiates are there's such a magnetic pull that is telling your brain, this is your out. You know this, Corey. You know that. Remember how shitty you were feeling yesterday on your shift? Remember all that anxiety? And remember how when you took that hydromorphone, the anxiety was gone and you were back to being super nurse? And the pathway is formed as quickly as that, I believe.